Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Yesterday, and then more stuff happened, as it does. So we're gonna pivot to the latest breaking information or news, because I think it's a relatively short coverage. Like we'll spend a relatively short amount of time on this one. It's developing, and that would be this morning. Make sure I have the right one. No, I need to make sure I have the English version. This morning, the Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, hosted a press conference. And unfortunately, the English version is not playing very well, but I can at least pull up the press conference here. And I guess late last night, he said, I'm going to host a press conference tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. I think it was maybe 10:30 Havana time. And he said, I have a major announcement to make. And it's important to know about this guy that he is the first non-Castro family member to be president of Cuba since Fidel Castro took over the country, 70 years ago, 1950s, I believe. And here is what he said. He said, so he held the press conference with Raulito, El Cangrejo, as his nickname, the Crab. And basically he said, we are currently in negotiations with the Trump administration. That's the official narrative. And didn't really expand on it, didn't give us a ton of information, just acknowledged for the first time that these were rumors that like Axios was reporting. I think Barack Ravid and Mark Caputo were the ones who were reporting it over at Axios, which just, again, affirms that those guys are getting good, like they're getting good intel from the White House. Doesn't mean everything they report is like exactly what's happening, but I think they report what the White House tells them. And so I'm trying to see if I can find a better source, but it doesn't look like all these videos are in Spanish, which doesn't really do us much good. There might be some Spanish speakers in the chat. Here's the Guardian article. A Cuban president confirms talks with Trump officials amid U.S. blockade. Negotiations aim to find solutions to the bilateral differences between the two countries. Miguel Diaz-Canel said Cuban officials have held talks with the U.S. government. The country's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, confirmed on Friday amid growing pain inflicted by a punishing U.S. fuel blockade and frequent power failures. Quote, these talks have been aimed at finding solutions through dialogue to the bilateral differences we have between the two nations, Diaz-Canel said in a pre-recorded statement to senior communist officials. I think it's interesting that it was pre-recorded. Those differences are stark and well known. Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State and son of Cuban immigrants, has made it clear he wants regime change in Havana, while Donald Trump this week repeated his calls for a friendly takeover, quote unquote, before then telling reporters it may not be a friendly takeover. That's very Trumpian. After the U.S. military's successful abduction of Venezuelan president and Cuba ally Nicolas Maduro in January, Trump signed an executive order effectively placing the Caribbean island under an oil blockade. Diaz-Canel confirmed on Friday that no fuel has entered for 3 months. In his remarks to the Communist Party leaders and subsequently to hand-picked reporters, Diaz-Canel was careful not to offer much more information beyond efforts to increase domestic oil production and keep the electricity grid operating in some form. Recently, large numbers of people have been banging pans on the streets at night to signal their frustration, and a group of students at Havana University staged a sit-in on the university steps. Whenever we have been in tense situations in relations with the United States, efforts have been made to find channels for dialogue, Diaz-Canel told the reporters. I believe the most recent example. I'm sorry, I lost my place. I believe the most recent example, or the talks with President Obama. Despite the lack of information, I remember that. I remember the Obama situation. Despite the lack of information, there were plenty of signs to read, most notably the presence of Raul Guillermo Rodriguez Castro, the 41-year-old grandson of the 94-year-old former president Raul Castro. During the statement in the press conference, Rodriguez Castro has no official role in government, and until recently, he was best known as a businessman and his grandfather's head of security. I believe his grandfather. So Rodriguez Castro would be the grandson. I've seen him referred to as Raulito, like little Raul. I guess here they're referring to him as, here it says, but in the past few weeks, it has been widely leaked by Washington that Raulito, as he is often known, has been meeting with U.S. officials, including during February's CARICOM meeting of Caribbean leaders in St. Kitts. Carlos Alzugaray, Cuba's former ambassador to the EU, said it was a clear message of unity from the Cuban government. Quote, "It's not the narrative that the U.S. State Department wants to project," he said. "That narrative is that this is a government in panic and that the U.S. is in talks with the Castro family, that Raul Castro is negotiating his exit and is prepared to sacrifice Diaz-Canel. That is clearly not the case. The president made a point to say the talks were directed by Raul Castro and himself." Cuba preceded its announcement with news that it will release 51 prisoners in the coming days under an agreement with the Vatican. As yet, it has not announced who will be included. According to prisoners' defenders, Cuba is holding 1,214 prisoners of conscience. According to Michael Bustamante, chair of Cuban and Cuban American Studies at the University of Miami, the names will be important, especially if they include Luis Manuel Otero Alcantara, an artist and dissident who was arrested during protests that roiled Cuba in July 2021 and whose incarceration still offends many Cubans. Quote, "That could be taken as a significant adjustment," he said, "but the conditions under which they are released is important. If they have a sword of Damocles over their heads and could be sent back to prison at any point, that doesn't really resolve the point." He also pointed out that the 51 prisoners released are fewer than the 53 Cuba freed during the negotiations with Barack Obama's administration in December 2014, at the beginning of the Obama administration's thaw in relations. He also suggested that Diaz-Canel blundered in comparing Cuba's willingness to proceed in these talks with how they handled negotiations with Obama. Quote, "If you know nothing else about the Trump administration, you should know that the president hates Obama. So if you're trying to ratchet down the tension, comparing what you're doing to what you did with Obama is not the way to go." There was no immediate response to Cuba's statement from the White House. So again, not a lot of information out of the pre-recorded statement this morning. We can go back to with that video. I'll let it play in the background while I just kind of give my thoughts. Make it full screen. There it is. Okay, so this affirms the speculation that we're probably going to see a Castro reinstalled. The Castros are coming back into power. Because again, this guy, I believe Diaz-Canel came into office. I want to say it was in 2019. Let me just confirm that. 2021. So first secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba and top leader of Cuba since 2021. So 2021, he comes into power. It mentions that there are riots or protests that were happening at the time. I'll need to dig more into this guy because I'm not intimately familiar with his background and how he came into power. But what's interesting to me, the thing that I find very notable, is that number one, the Cuba war is not happening, obviously. Cuba has now come out and officially said, we're speaking to the Trump administration. We're negotiating officially. And if Raulito ends up coming into office and becoming the leader of Cuba, which is the most likely outcome, in my opinion, Trump has already said, we want somebody who the people are familiar with, right? And that Axios article, according to officials in the White House who spoke to them, said that the view in the White House was that this, I call him a kid because he's my age, so I'm just going to call him a kid, but he's 41, but he's obviously a kid compared to all of these elders that he's working with. This kid grew up in an era where he doesn't appreciate communism. He doesn't appreciate the way, the collectivism that his grandfather and great grandfather were about. So the idea is that opening up the markets, introducing capitalism. But again, we need to understand like these monikers. Matt Arrett has educated me greatly on what this all like how these monikers are weaponized against leaders, as has Colonel Tanner Watkins. Pretty much anyone who disagreed with the CIA would be labeled a communist. A lot of times, and I learned this more. I became more familiar with this studying Hugo Chavez and Maduro. Is not when they disallow transnational corporations, oil companies specifically, to exploit their country and exploit their people, they're labeled as communists because they're not allowing, quote, free market economics to take place. They're keeping out the big corporations. So, that is, I think, an important qualifier when you're going around labeling people communists, not communists, whatever. This is going to piss off the Republican Party because there's a very large Hispanic wing of the neocon, like half the neocons are the ardent Zionists, like the Israel First people, the Ted Cruzes, the Lindsey Grahams. The other half of the neocon party are the Hispanics, like and I don't know if it's 50-50. I'm just kind of giving you generalizations here, but Southern Florida is a major like hub of like neoconservative thought. Marco Rubio was like the darling of that whole wing of the party for a reason, and was obviously being positioned to probably be president before Trump came along. And so a lot of them are not going to be happy. Remember, those are the people, by the way, who also nominated Maria Corina Machado. They're the ones who created her. They're the ones who launched her, so to speak, against Nicolas Maduro. I actually have a clip of her that I want to play. So we'll pivot to that here. But I find this very encouraging. I find it very encouraging that we're seeing this play out because, the neocons want to go around and do regime change everywhere. They got so excited after Maduro was arrested. They were thrilled about what Trump had done, because I think in their mind, as we went over on Tuesday, going through that article on Tuesday and explaining what Lindsey Graham was saying in these interviews, he said, "Oh, he really understands the way the world works now. He, after doing the regime change with Maduro, he has so much more confidence. He's so much more ready to do this. This is what you're supposed to do as a Republican president." And so they all think that Trump's gotten with the program, and Trump kind of understands now that this is how we're going to do it. It's amazing to me. I should play that clip I saw the other day of Trump in 2016 talking about Lindsey Graham. I think we will play that because that was just so good. But they really have taken the bait. I think they've taken the bait on what Trump, thinking that they think they figured out Trump, and they've dove in headfirst to this narrative, to these narratives, and they've basically adopted them and made them their own. Okay, let me pull this up. So Maria Corina Machado was, I think it was a press conference she was giving the other day, where she said that Maduro was afraid of her, and then the room started laughing, and it's hard to tell was the room laughing at her, I don't know, but kind of a very goofy. This is the way RT presented it. So RT gives the quote. Let me see. Yeah, so it's in Spanish, but it does have English subtitles. So RT posts this video and says, Nicolas Maduro was terrified of me, Venezuela's Maria Corina Machado. And then it says, audience laughs hysterically. So we'll watch it. We'll watch it once, and then it's only 50 seconds long, and then I'll read it but I want to keep the audio on so you can hear the audience laugh and we can kind of judge, were they laughing with her or were they laughing at her?
Y cuando a mí,
Nicolás
Maduro, porque me tenía
terrified.
terror, con razón,
Rightfully so.
en una elección,
He prevented me in an
impidió
election.
que yo
What could we do?
participara.
So, and we played the clip, like back in January, we played the clip of her confronting, if you go watch the Book of Trump episode on Hugo Chavez, she like went and confronted Hugo Chavez, and Hugo Chavez was just like laughed in her face. It was like, he treated her like the way Trump treats the CNN reporters. He's like, you're a nobody. I don't care about you. Get out. Like you're not even worth my time. And so she is working overtime, trying to inject herself back into the Venezuelan narrative. And so she's talking about, she says, he prevented me. I'm going to turn off the sound so I can just read her subtitles. So back up a little bit. He prevented me from participating in an election. What did we do? We looked for someone else and found Karina Yoris, a 74-year-old philosopher, spectacular. She had been part of the board of the National Primary Commission. No one could say she was a biased person, and they didn't even allow her to register. Why? I think it was because she was a woman and her name was Karina, among other things. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Also, because she was a very strong woman, and finally they accepted an extraordinary man like Edmundo Gonzalez because the election was very close, and they said, nobody knows this gentleman. Yeah, so that's all a bunch of nonsense. We'll do a Book of Trump episode on Maduro, and we'll cover that whole situation, the Edmundo Gonzalez, as well as the what was his name, Guaido. Remember, Guaido was the guy that they ran in, I think it was in 2018. And they were like, oh, yeah, this guy won the election. This is during Trump's first term. And they're like, oh, yeah, this guy won the election. And he was all of the politicians in the West, not just America, but the Europe. But they were all like, this is the actual president of Venezuela, not Nicolás Maduro. And then once Trump sent people to go meet with the Venezuelan officials, it was, who was it? It was, why am I blanking on this? It was Eric Prince went and met with Delcy Rodriguez in Mexico City, and it was oh man, I'm not Ratcliffe, but what's his name? What's his name, everybody? He went and met with the brother Jorge. So he went and met with Jorge, and his name will come back to me. And I'm embarrassed that I am not Rick Grinnell. I'm sorry. Thank you, Rick Grinnell. Rick Grinnell went and met with Jorge Rodriguez, and right after that, the Trump administration backed off of Guaido, and they're like, Guaido, kind of a loser. No thanks. So from here, let's pivot to Gustavo Petro. Because Gustavo Petro saying interesting things, saying very, very interesting things. He gave some commentary on the Shield of the Americas, the thing that we covered on Tuesday. And let me go pull up what he said. He said that the Shield of the Americas was basically a clown show. And the way he described it as an effort to subvert President Trump in his real efforts to actually take down the cartels. This is Gustavo Petro saying this. And he said that when him and Trump spoke, they had a real conversation about taking down the cartels. And then basically what this thing is basically bad actors trying to subvert Trump and trying to take the reins on that situation. And again, if that's true, like, we don't know if it's true or not. This is just what the president of Colombia is saying. By the way, they had an election this week and Petro's party swept. So Petro gained even more power. I'm not really sure what the situation is in Colombia, whether he's going to be able to remain president. I think they might have like term limits there because they've been making it sound like he's leaving office this year, but his party like gained way more seats in their legislature, and apparently he's very, 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 very popular. So let's see, man, he posts so much stuff. He posts like every hour, multiple times. Okay. And, you know, one of the things that we kind of talk, like Chris Paul and some of us were talking about, like in our private chat, is like the Shield of America's thing was kind of cartoonish. Like there was like a comic book kind of element to it. There was like an unseriousness to it. But if all of that is true, then, you know, it kind of follows a template that we're seeing everywhere else, where Trump is kind of letting bad actors run with their little agendas, but he's doing his own thing. And so like the bad actors are kind of busying themselves, spinning their wheels, trying to take control of like these narratives, but Trump is actually going the other way. We're seeing that with Iran. We're going to get to Iran, of course. So here's one post. This is he had a phone call with Trump yesterday. He posted about it, and he said he posted about it at 5:00 yesterday afternoon Eastern time, and said, "Today we had a cordial phone conversation about several specific topics. It is important to reactivate the borders without OFAC and without mafias." And OFAC is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. That is the Office of the Treasury that imposes sanctions. Like when we talk about Executive Order 13818 and you know, all the sanctions that are imposed on Iran, on Russia, on Maduro, on Gustavo Petro, it's always through OFAC. And so, and he said in his 1-hour press conference after meeting with Trump last month that he was not a fan of OFAC, that he thought OFAC was actually an impediment to diplomacy. And he would like to see OFAC take a back seat to other methodologies to negotiate, so to speak. But Trump's been using the sanctions narrative, negotiation, otherwise. Okay, so let me see if I can find this exact post. This was. Okay, so he's been posting so much about coffee, like, and he almost is like a thespian, like the way he talks, the way he presents himself. Like here he is. This is like a TV commercial. Like look at this. This is
pasarlo y dar el primer paso. Cuando tienes un sueño que te parece imposible y un día decides abrazar, convierte en ese caminar, descubres que ese sueño llena plazas y que se transforma en un sueño colectivo que.
He says, "This is how it all began. I proposed a change and we are making it happen. Now the decision is very clear. Either the transformations continue or we go back to Duque's government. They've already put their old officials back in place to take us back." So he's referring to the guy who was president before him. He came into office in 2022. This is his last year in office. And let's see. The thing he's been posting about nonstop is coffee, because he's been flying around the world, speaking to leaders and negotiating these big coffee deals where he went a few months ago to the Middle East. He met with the Qataris, he met with the Saudis, you know, and one of the things in Arab culture, and we saw this with Trump when he went and got the sword dance, is they're big on coffee, right? They're huge on coffee in the Middle East. And so when you arrive somewhere, there's like a ritual that's performed, and part of the ritual is you're brought coffee, right? And then I think you're probably served coffee throughout your visit, but it's like a tiny little cup of it's like an espresso. And Trump like held it and basically didn't drink it because he doesn't drink coffee. So he held it, you know, for the picture, and then he handed it to somebody, didn't drink it. But so he went and negotiated and announced that they were like Qatar and Saudi Arabia were going to be using just Colombian coffee for everything they do. It was going to be Colombian coffee everywhere. And so he went and has been negotiating all week, or for the past several weeks, with all these other governments about getting more and more coffee bilateral agreements on coffee. And then also he's been posting videos about farmers because he's been big on talking about how do you shut down the drug cartels? Well, you go to the farmers who are growing the cocaine, you teach, you incentivize them to tear up the cocaine plants by the root, because he said if you put herbicide on them, it doesn't kill the plant, it kills everything else but the cocaine plant. And you can't burn it either. That's too dangerous. And it's not effective. As long as the root is there, the plant will grow back. So he said, you have to rip it out by the root. We've learned this in time trying to fight the cartels. And so he's been going around, and I think it's like 30,000 or 40,000 hectares of cocaine farms they've torn up the roots. And then the Colombian government has helped them plant the coffee. It's coffee and chocolate. Those are the two things they're growing. And then I think it's also coconuts is the third crop. But coffee is number one. Chocolate's another big one. Qatar is huge into chocolate. They're big into chocolate. So he's shipping chocolate to Qatar as well. But this is how he's pulling Colombia out of the mafia. Like this is how he's saving Colombia. And it's really, really interesting. Here it is. Here's the post. So he's responding to this post from Juan Esteban Silva. And it says, attention, President Trump responds to me directly stating that he considers Colombia and Mexico just like Brazil. Yes, we're invited to the summit of the Shield of Americas. He says he has a very good relationship with these countries. Remember, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico didn't attend. Like notably, they were absent. Let's listen to Trump.
Mr. President, there were three countries that were not invited to the Shield of the Americas. Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia were not invited to the Shield of the Americas. Why was that? And could they come in the future to the event? They were invited. Maybe they didn't come. I think we were getting along very well about it.
Okay, so he says, yeah, they were invited. Like maybe they didn't come. He's like, I don't know. I get along with everyone. He was being asked a lot about Iran, so that was kind of like a random question, right? And so then Gustavo Petro posts quote posts it, and his response is this: I think there's another broken phone situation, and I think this is translated from Spanish. He doesn't speak English, so I think what he's referring to is like there's a broken game of telephone happening here. I think that's what the translation is supposed to be. It says transforming an anti-drug trafficking alliance into an ideological alliance is a substantial mistake. That's what he refers to the Shield of the Americas as. He says, we, all nations together, defeated the mafias regardless of political differences. That was the purpose of my meeting with President Donald Trump. And from what I can see, he agrees with it. Neither Brazil, nor Mexico, nor Colombia, key players in the fight against drug trafficking, were invited. And it wasn't by President Trump's decision. That's a really important point he's making there. He's saying it wasn't Trump's fault. We must rescue Latin American and Caribbean integration above the ideological differences between governments. The alliance against drug trafficking must include all countries of the Americas without exclusion. The magnitude of the problem demands unity and not ideological fundamentalism. That's why I maintain my invitation to President Trump to meet in Cartagena, Colombia. So I think that we want to keep an eye on whether to see if and when Trump goes to South America. I could see a situation where Trump suddenly goes down there and he goes to Colombia and Venezuela. But I think we have some narrative hurdles to get through before that happens, and maybe even some military operations against the cartels. But then he goes on to say, it says, let's see. He then reposted that same post later to make sure people saw it. And then the other post that he made about it, I want to say, basically he was responding to people and kind of going back and forth. And I appreciate like how candid he is, like making these responses. But the thing that he was describing when he talked about the Shield of Americas, he basically said there are bad people who are trying to take over this thing, trying to take over Trump's efforts to fight the drug trafficking with him in South America. And the way I could see this playing out, like just how did this happen? How did it happen that they weren't invited to Shield of the Americas? And then remember, him and Trump spoke, I think the next day. He made this post on March 11th, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, March 11th. He reposted it on March 12th. And then that day he spoke to Trump, that was yesterday, on the phone. And he said it was a cordial call. And they talked about the mafia, getting the mafias out of the Americas and getting rid of OFAC, and so that the Office of Foreign Asset Control out of it. He then later, it was posted that said he reposted a post from somebody else. It says, Claudia Sheinbaum speaks with Gustavo Petro by phone and confirms Mexico's attendance at the CELAC Africa Summit in Bogota. Both leaders spoke by phone to discuss the strengthening of economic relations between the two countries. In particular, expressed their interest in deepening bilateral ties in the areas of energy. So Mexico and Colombia speaking. And then again, so this guy loves going after fake news. He's quote posting a Spanish outlet that says Brazilian media revealed that the true content of the phone call between Gustavo Petro and Da Silva, the president of Brazil, was related to Lula's concern over the possibility that the United States government designation of groups dedicated to drug trafficking as terrorist organizations could lead to potential military incursions by the Trump administration into Brazilian territory. They also reportedly discussed common strategies to combat drug trafficking at the Latin American level. So Gustavo Petro quote posted this, calls out the specific author of the publisher of the report. It says it's Caracol Radio, which has 3.7 million followers, so it's not a small account. Looks like it's followed by Maria Corina Machado, Nicolas Maduro, and Gustavo Petro. What they say is not true. I invited President Lula to Bogota to the CELAC Africa meeting, and he accepted. I think that's like the Caribbean Africa Summit. He said, we will sign a joint statement with Mexico and the countries that join, requesting a ceasefire in the Middle East war so that the peace dialogue can begin. So he's basically saying this is not true. Like we weren't shit talking President Trump, which is what they were trying to, I think, convey. And again, this is a pattern. We're seeing patterns where the fake news media is trying to drive wedges between Trump and these sovereign alliance bros, in my opinion. But the way I could see the whole Shield of America is playing out is if we have neocons in the administration who are trying to take this thing away. Anna Paulina Luna is hosting this thing this month. I think it's this month or next month, sometime in the next few weeks. She calls it the Alliance of Sovereign Nations. It's like the Sovereign Alliance, right? But she's going to be like the head of it. Like her and a few other Republicans are going to be the head of it. And I don't know. It just feels like they're trying to take away Trump's like control over it, like Trump's ability to control the story and tell the narrative. And this will all come back when we get to Iran. But again, if that's true, if somebody like President Trump is doing so many things right now, like, does he really care about this Shield of the Americas thing? I don't think so. Again, the fact that I think I conveyed on the last show, maybe last week, that what's her name, Kristi Noem, was fired, or she was reassigned to the UN. Somebody in the chat, forgive me, forgot who it was, corrected me after the show turned off, after the show was already doing the outro, that she wasn't reassigned to the UN. She was reassigned to the Shield of the Americas, which might be effectively the same thing, like getting sent off to this international organization that may not even be relevant soon. But again, if these people are trying to subvert Trump and they organize this thing and they're like, hey, Mr. President, this is on your schedule, like you need to go attend this. We're getting all of these Central and South American leaders together, and Trump's like, okay, great, yeah, I'll be there. But it's not like President Trump is responsible for putting together the guest list or calling the people and inviting them. I mean, there's other people who do that, right? That's the staffer's job. So as far as President Trump knows, they were invited, and then, maybe he's told by these people, oh yeah, we invited them, but they're not coming. They're busy. Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. Like this thing isn't even really that important. Shield of the Americas, who cares? Like, we don't need the Shield of the Americas. We don't need more organizations, right? We don't need more UNs. We don't need to create like the EU over and over and over again, layers and layers of transnational government in order to control situations. We just need individual countries to act in their own best interest and to cooperate with us to solve mutual problems that affect both of us. The drug cartels would be one of them, right? The financiers who launder and steal all the money would be another one, right? Kind of a connected problem. But what these communists in government, specifically in the Republican Party, like to do, and the Democrats, is they like to create regulation. They like to create governments, like layers of government to control situations. They like to create the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That was a Republican creation. Okay, that was created by the Republican Party. NAFTA, right? Remember NAFTA? The World Trade Organization, like when Kissinger brought China into like the global marketplace, right? They like to create these layers of government to control individual nations from being able to exercise their sovereignty. So the Shield of Americas thing was always kind of goofy to me. I'm like, okay, cool, but what Petro's telling us is that it's a clown show. We shouldn't take it seriously. But it's not President Trump's fault that it's a clown show. It's other people's fault it's a clown show. And he is still speaking directly to Trump, and Trump's the good guy, and him and Trump are working together. And there's fake news narratives out there that it's not, that's not the case. So anyway, wanted to cover all of that because we did talk about the geography of the Caribbean on Tuesday and how important Cuba was. And then now we have Cuba admitting that they are in negotiations with Trump. Here's the post. I think one of the posts I was talking about says, he's saying, oh God, this is Gustavo Petro. Oh God, there they go with like 50,000 hectares of land altogether and just 2 people from this video without producing a single cassava plant. And that's how they want to govern Colombia again. So I think he's ridiculing. These are like the neocons or whatever of Colombia. I think he's ridiculing the Duque crowd, who are basically trying to steal his thunder and trying to act like they have solutions, even though they had no solutions when they were controlling Colombia. So anyway, it's a little too early to do a commercial break, so we'll just go ahead and pivot. Let's pivot to. Actually, we're going to pivot to a Rumble rant because I believe I have a Rumble rant from Eleanor. I can't remember if that was from Breaking History or from this show, but I'll go ahead and read it. Waiting for that to load up. But yeah, chat, if you have any questions on any specific topics, happy to. Oh, wait, the chat's saying I'm not using the good mic. Yeah, this has been happening ever since I got this new camera. I got a new camera, and the camera wants to take over my mic automatically. Yeah, so let me see if this is better.
How's that, chat? Is my mic better now? StreamYard keeps automatically switching it to the camera. Relay goes change your mic. Yep, just checking in on the chat and see that. All right, so I see a Rumble rant from Jack 71113. Intro music is still playing. Badlands Daily playing over you. That might be on your end, dude. I don't know. I don't have any music playing on my end, so I don't know. Yeah. Everyone else is saying no music playing. See if you have, Jack, a second tab open, because if you have 2 tabs open, sometimes the music will play. I don't know, or just refresh. Appreciate the rant. And then let me just grab this rant from Eleanor. Eleanor, appreciate your generosity. Don't know if we'll see you in Nashville, but it was great seeing you in Cocoa. And the Miro mind map, I can tell is getting too big because it just takes forever for it to load. Okay. And so the rant is not going to have the... Okay, so it was a breaking history, but I'll go ahead and read it anyway. From Eleanor 2000, been lurking, listening, Matt and Gordon. I can't tell you how incredible this particular breaking history has been in words. Thank you, Matt. Where can we learn more about London's role? I saw that right as we had signed off, Eleanor, and I conveyed that to Matt. And so he's going to have all of his notes ready on Wednesday. We'll start with that. We agreed we were going to start with that on Wednesday. So he'll have some resources that he can refer you to for London. And yeah, we were talking about in the context of that, the Promethean action people. because he used to work with them. So if you want to go listen to his thoughts, you can go back and listen to the breaking history from Wednesday. Yeah. So, I was going through and pulling and making some clips the past couple of days, and I stumbled onto one that I wish I'd found this before we did the I wish I'd found this one before we did the Mike Huckabee shows with Ash. Unfortunately, I didn't, but I'll go ahead and just play this because I think that this is playing out now in real time, and it's encouraging. And it's one of the reasons that I have been like following the Tucker interviews pretty closely, because not all of them, but the ones that I find interesting. Because while I don't necessarily agree with every single thing that's being conveyed on those shows, I do think that the Mike Huckabee one was very powerful for a reason. And this is from back in November at Cocoa Beach.
Things that allows us people is accountability and responsibility. And those two words.
And by the way, this is our friend, Lieutenant Colonel Oak. So he's asking a question.
The things that allows us people is accountability and responsibility. And those two words have become dirty words in our society, and we have to change that. Everybody has to be held accountable for what they do, their performance, what they say, what they don't say. And I think we all agree with that. And our leaders, we're not going to respect them until they take responsibility for the things that they do. And we don't see that right now. So how do we get back? How do we change? And I don't know that there is an answer or an easy answer, but how do we change so that we do have accountability and responsibility? And that's not a dirty word in our society anymore.
Well, it's a good question. And I go back to the friction and the confrontation, and, being able to question things and being able to confront Megyn Kelly and being able to confront whoever the public figure is. It's a great point. Because holding them accountable means being able to ask them hard questions and put them in a position where answering the question that they don't want to answer is going to make them either look foolish or maybe look like a fraud. If you don't have the opportunity to ask that question, then how are you ever going to get that moment? How are you ever going to have accountability? And the problem is that when they only go and speak to CBS or Fox News or MSM or whoever, the questions are not the questions that we actually want to ask them. And so if you don't have those opportunities and there is no confrontation and there is no accountability, then you're never going to break out of the system that Donald Trump is trying to break us out of.
I think that's.
Yeah. And so I think that that's exactly what happened with the Mike Huckabee situation, is that he was put in a situation where he had to answer questions, real questions, right? And it exposed him. He was totally exposed. And his ideology was also exposed because he was, John, appreciate that. And John texted me at the beginning of the show and said, I think you're using the wrong mic. Yeah, so totally exposed. I was trying to pull up this video that Rise of Tire had made, but for some reason it's not loading in X. Adrian, I know you're listening. If you can, send it to me in Telegram, if you don't mind, or send me the Dropbox link, because for some reason it's like just a spinning wheel of death in X, and I really do want to play that video y'all made. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. It's a few minutes early, but we're gonna go ahead and do the halftime, and we will come back, reorient, and shift to the Middle East.
What up, Badlanders? Are you ready to rock something new in 2026? Well, as always, we got you covered with the Rise Badlands Native Collection. Built from the rich tones and rugged terrain of the Dakotas, equal parts beautiful and brutal. Old roots, new vibe. Whether you got gators in your backyard or you have to take a bush plane to the post office, Badlanders are worldwide. Different dirt, same tribe. By the way, your friends at Rise have a deal for you. Show up at GART rocking your native gear. Swing by our booth and get in to win a free Badlands Rise hoodie of your choice. And don't forget, Every order throws fuel on the fire of the Made in USA parallel economy. So grab something now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
You've been sold a lie that food should be cheap, that grocery store chicken and beef are fine. They're not. At Rattlesnake, they raise protein the right way, pasture-raised, 21-day aged beef and premium pasture-raised chicken with no subsidies, no shortcuts. It's not cheap to produce. It shouldn't be cheap to eat. Bite back. Think different about your protein. Visit rattlesnakemeats.com/Badlands, promo code Badlands, and get an order sent Monday or Tuesday. Ships to all the lower 48 states, shipping included.
Legend says, on St. Patrick's Day, a beard without oil is just a chin with ambition. But a beard with soft disclosure beard oil, that's true treasure. Spiced vanilla, naked, smooth as a leprechaun's getaway plan. Soft enough to impress your barber, bold enough to confuse a baby goat. And this boar bristle brush tames your beard like it holds the crown coin. Every bottle is American made, which means when you buy Soft Disclosure, you're supporting 6 American small businesses. That's not luck. That's capitalism with cheekbones. And while you're at it, try our mint green deodorant, because even legends need fresh pits. Soft Disclosure. Go for gold. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code TINYBRIGHT for 15% off.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. Promo code does not apply to bottle discounts.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, My Pillow mattresses and My Pillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
But this is all I've been drinking since last Friday. Don't drink coffee anymore. And I feel more focused since I've been taking it. It's been amazing. And so I would encourage you guys to try it out. This might be my new favorite thing.
This might be your new favorite thing too. I want to talk about today's sponsor, something that's totally changing lives. If you're dealing with low energy, stubborn belly fat, high blood pressure, or cholesterol, you're not alone. Did you know 9 out of 10 adults have these metabolic issues? That can lead to fatigue, brain fog, and even gut issues that mess with your mood and weight. That's where Feel Great comes in, a simple 2-step daily practice that's changing lives. More energy, no cravings, clear thinking, and no more stubborn belly fat. Imagine waking up ready to crush the day and shed a few stubborn pounds without crazy dieting. If you want to feel great and support the show, head to badlandshealth.com and lock in $70 off today and all future orders, plus a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's badlandshealth.com. Trust me, your future self will thank you. about GART 11 because we are heading back for another get together, and this one's going to be a lot of fun. This one's going to be in Nashville, April 9th through 12th. So we're less than a month away now. Really looking forward to this. I've never been to Nashville, so really excited to get to that part of the country. You can go to badlandsmedia.tv/events to get either your in-person ticket or your virtual ticket. I know we typically do one day passes, single day passes, but I think that's based on availability. So you'll have to go, that's above my pay grade, whether or not those are available, but I'm sure that all the information on whether they are will be on that page. I know they did the first exclusive live stream yesterday. And we're going to do one every Thursday at 2:00 Eastern until the event. I'll be on the one next week. And I believe the ticket price for virtual tickets goes up on Sunday. So they're at a discounted rate right now. So go ahead and buy them right now if you're planning on doing it. And you should be planning on doing it. That's again, badlandsmedia.tv/events. Really excited about this one. Going to have Jonathan Drake there, Josh Reed, Matt Trump. So, looking forward to meeting those three. And we will, I met Josh and Coco, but I feel like I didn't get to talk to him nearly enough as much as I wanted to. So, yeah, excited for that. And I think we got this. Did we get this video downloaded? Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll play this as the outro because I think this is a good video. All right. Appreciate that, Adrian. We will play this as the outro. So you have that to look forward to. Let me just make sure I have that loaded. All right. So let's now pivot to the Middle East. Now, I want to play this video that I saw because it kind of, it affirms a theory that I've had for a while now. It doesn't, I wouldn't say it affirms it, but it is another brick in the wall, so to speak, of supporting this theory. I came across this the other day, and this is Kushner-Christie on some podcast. I don't know, but it's posted by We the Fifth. Is like the outlet I saw post it, which is I think that it's in reference like fifth column infiltration. So and of course I think they're presenting it as like Jared Kushner being a bad guy, right? But let's watch the video and then I'll remind you of what my theory is. So here's Kushner-Christie.
I think the single biggest reason Jared got into the Trump White House was to ensure that his father would be pardoned.
But people who don't know, who's his father?
His father was, when I prosecuted him in 2004, the second richest man in New Jersey. He hired a prostitute to seduce his sister's husband.
Yeah.
Videotaped it. And then on the day of his sister's son's engagement party, an engagement party that he was going to attend, he had the videotape delivered to his sister's house so she could see her husband having sex with someone else.
You are the head of the transition in 2016. There's going to be some interfacing with Jared Kushner, I'd imagine, right?
Much to his chagrin, yes. Yeah. The day that Trump was naming me, he went into Trump's office and said, "You can't do this," in front of me.
In front of you?
Oh, yeah.
And what was the argument?
I'm immoral, I'm a bad person, and said that it should have never been prosecuted. It wasn't a crime. It was something that should have been handled by the rabbis because it was a family dispute.
Oh.
And I just sat there and didn't say anything. And finally, Trump looked at me and said, "Are you going to say anything to defend yourself?" I said, "I want to defend myself to him." And by the way, I looked at him and said, "By the way, your father pled guilty to all 18 counts." So
there's some credit to Trump in this that he said, "All right, fine."
Yeah, he named me anyway. But then, of course, he fired me because Jared just continued to pound me.
But that was Jared, you think, that precipitated that firing?
Oh, I know it was Jared.
Okay.
Because both Donald Trump and Steve Bannon told me it was Jared.
Okay. So again, there's a lot of interesting things happening in that clip. Number one, I had read some version of what Charles Kushner was charged with. 18 counts for what he just described doesn't sound right. I thought that I was under the impression that it was election campaign. It was like election campaign finance stuff. But I did recall reading about this infidelity aspect of it. I mean, look, at face value, I need to go dig into this and like really understand better what specifically happened to Charles Kushner, and what the allegations were and how that all unfolded. But at surface level, it sounds like the husband was like his brother-in-law was cheating on his sister, and he was basically exposing that to his sister. And I mean, hiring a prostitute, like, okay, that's definitely a crime. So yeah, I get that. But here's where it gets interesting. Jared Kushner, like, if that's all true, if everything that he says is true, and I'm not like validating or saying that what Charles Kushner did was okay, but I mean, I get it. Your family is your family, and you're going to protect your family however you can. If what he says is true and Jared Kushner walks into the room, Jared Kushner does not come off as that kind of guy. He doesn't come off as the kind of guy who, like he comes off as very quiet and like unassuming and very like mild mannered. So if he actually did walk into the room when Chris Christie was meeting with Trump and he just totally disrespected Chris Christie and said, this guy's a scumbag, you can't hire him. And then Trump turns to Chris Christie and says, what do you have to say for yourself? Defend yourself. And Chris Christie just goes, I'm not going to doesn't defend himself. I've seen this play out, by the way, on The Apprentice. Like, I was never an Apprentice watcher. I'm not a reality television guy. But I did watch several episodes of it, like primarily the Dennis Rodman episodes in preparation for the episode of The Apprentice. It was episode 2, chapter 2 of the Book of Trump. We did The Apprentice. I did it with Patrick Gunnels, who was a big Apprentice fan back in the day. And that's what Trump would do on the show. So what Trump would do in The Apprentice is he would always bring people in and he would put them in really uncomfortable situations just like that. And he'd be like, how are you going to respond to that? And the whole time I was watching it, I was kind of like, does Trump actually care about this stuff? Like, I thought the show was about like business acumen and like being his assistant. And I come to find, like, watching several episodes of it, he didn't even really care about the business acumen because these were all celebrities. It was like a celebrity apprentice. I don't think he really cared about their business acumen. He cared, how do they handle pressure? How do they handle a curveball? Can they keep their composure? Like, do they have integrity? Like, can they defend themselves in a situation? Can they, like, are they a fighter? Do they have the fight inside of them? That was what he was looking for at all times. And he would even send Omarosa, who was like from the very first season when it was not celebrities. He would send her in all the time to stir up trouble. She would come in and she would start talking rumors and like just do like, catty kind of like Machiavellian cloak and dagger kind of stuff to cause problems. And then Trump would kind of sit back with her, like she would come sit in the limousine with Trump and they would talk about like what was happening and like the dynamics that were unfolding because of her like orchestrated chaos. And I take that template and I'm like, well, I mean, he was doing that on The Apprentice on television. You got to think he's probably doing that in politics as well as president. Trump probably orchestrated that entire moment. He probably was like, hey, Jared, I'm going to hire Chris Christie for like a minute for a short period of time. Let's see what happens when you come in and disrespect him. And he probably used Chris Christie, et cetera, to get information, whatever. I think Trump did that all the time. He would bring in people that he didn't actually like. Lindsey Graham is a great example. But the fact that Jared said the rabbi should have handled it, the rabbis should have handled it, that's speaking to like the Sharia law of Judaism, like of Orthodox Judaism. Like the Jewish judicial system, justice system should have handled that situation, not the actual justice system, because this was a family dispute. That's really interesting. But that also speaks to a deeper issue here. And like my theory has always been with Jared Kushner, once I learned about Charles, because I didn't know about Charles until several years ago, back during the Biden administration. When who created Christie? The Zionists, right? Like the AIPAC wing of the Republican Party. There's no shortage of clips of Christie running around with like a flak jacket on, running around like Israel, groveling at the feet of all the Israeli leaders, and doing the thing. Like, and this is even before October 7th, he was doing that stuff. But after October 7th, he was all over the place doing that. He is a Zionist lapdog. He is a lapdog of Israel. Okay. And the importance of that is that he is controlled by those people. Like you would imagine that any one of those Zionists, whether they're an American Zionist or an Israeli Zionist, a Christian Zionist or a Jewish Zionist, they control him because they're his donors, right? Any one of them could pick up the phone and say, hey, man, Mr. Attorney General, Charles Kushner is our friend. Lay off. Like, just, give him a slap on the wrist, cut him a sweetheart deal, lay off. Conversely, how does Charles Kushner in that situation, second richest man in New Jersey, like we're told that all of politics is corrupt and that the rich never get prosecuted for anything. How does a guy in that situation who is a loyal member of the diaspora, he's on all these like Holocaust Remembrance Alliance like boards or whatever, prior to his arrest, after his arrest, how does he not get the benefit of that network? How nobody picks up the phone? His good friend Bibi Netanyahu doesn't pick up the phone and call Christie and say, hey man, don't give this guy prison time. Instead, they throw the book at him. They give him 18 counts. He pleads guilty to all of them, probably because his lawyer told him that that's the smart thing to do. I've been in that situation, not on the criminal side, but on the victim side, right? The guy who murdered my brother. I understand how this all works. Like, you have the evidence, and if you're going to get convicted at a trial, then the best thing to do is to go cut a deal as early as you can, because if you make them go to trial, then either a jury or a judge is going to decide, and you're going to get way more time. So if you plead guilty, then you're going to get, you can like you go to a sentencing matrix, and then basically it comes down to precedents, like cases that have already happened with people who had gotten the similar convictions to you, and also recommendations from the prosecutor. That's a big one. And so Christie, I guess, must have recommended 2 years in prison, which is outrageous for a middle-aged man who with no criminal record, who's guilty of effectively a white-collar crime. Outrageous, right? So you got to wonder, why did Christie do that to Charles Kushner? I mean, from Christie's standpoint, it's like, I wouldn't describe it as low-hanging fruit. You're making an enemy of the second richest man in New Jersey, as he just said. So why would you do that? Well, maybe somebody told him to do that. Maybe Charles Kushner has enemies in the diaspora, enemies in the Zionist network, right? And the point is obviously, according to Christie, Jared Kushner has a vendetta against him. He had a grudge. He held that grudge for years. That happened in 2005, right? Kushner went to prison from 2005 to 2007, I believe. And now we're talking 2016 is when Trump is, 2017, when he gets into office, that's when he's meeting with Christie. And that's when Jared Kushner walks in and says, don't hire this guy. He's a scumbag. He's a POS. And then Christie doesn't even defend himself. He doesn't do the thing that Trump looks for on The Apprentice at all times. He squirms. He wilts in that moment and just shows pure weakness. And then Steve Bannon later telling Christie that Jared Kushner did this, that feels a little strategic to me. That feels a little strategic. Like you're giving Christie a reason to now hate the Kushners even more, and maybe even hate Trump even more, right? And then we see Trump over the years since then, because this is back in 2017, especially during the Biden administration, talk about, like, do you remember how much he ridiculed Christie on the campaign trail in 2024? Like, Christie's not a fat pig. I would never call him that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Every single rally, he was making fun of Christie. So the point is that Trump obviously has a negative view of Christie. Kushner obviously has a negative view of Christie. Trump then pardons Charles Kushner of those 18 convictions in 2020, and then gives him one of the cushiest jobs in the world, which is the ambassador to France. That's what he is right now. Again, I think Jared Kushner has an axe to grind against the people who did that to his father. And the people who did that to his father have to include the Jewish diaspora, have to include an Israeli network, because the Israelis, the Zionists, whether they're Jewish or Christian, controlled Chris Christie. They made Chris Christie. He's one of their puppets. So anyway, I find that fascinating. I think that was, I did not expect that I didn't have that on my bingo card, so to speak. And that kind of sets up everything happening with Iran now, because we have so many different elements of this narrative. We had Monday, Trump gave we talked about this on Tuesday, but Monday, over the weekend, the price of oil spikes to $119 a barrel, right? I have the chart right here. The IAE, which is like the International Consortium of Energy Producers, OPEC and plus others, they announced that they're going to release 400 million barrels that they have in their reserves onto the market to help the supply because of the strain from the Strait of Hormuz. That drops the price. You can see right here. So the price spikes up over the weekend, like late last week, the price spikes. This very large red candle right here represents let me pull this up. I'm sorry. I don't think I have it on screen. This very large red candle, it crashes from 119, I guess maybe it was 120, close to 120, something like that, crashes down to like around 100, like 104. Okay. And then it kind of like is stepping down for a day or two throughout Sunday. And then Trump does the phone call with Vladimir Putin on Monday. And then right after the call, it was either a press conference or I think it was an interview with CBS News. He was on television. I remember it being everywhere. Monday afternoon, and he says, yeah, the war is basically over. Like, we basically have completed our objectives. And that causes the price of oil to crash back down to $82. Now, it's like bounced around from the low 80s to like the 90s. Let me check and see where it's trading right now. But the point is that Trump, it looks like today it's trading at 99 a barrel. So it's back up around $100. We don't want it that high. But I think the IAE announced yesterday that they were releasing another 150 million barrels. I think it was 150, maybe 130 million barrels. And all of this, by the way, is being driven by speculation. This isn't being driven by actual supply. This is being driven by the speculation of what the supply is going to be based on the conditions of the Strait of Hormuz. And so, which means this is artificial, which means bad actors, you can assume, are leveraging this moment. I mean, there's definitely market conditions for sure at play, but there's also bad actors, I think, at play who are battling Trump. And so Trump is using narrative warfare to manipulate the markets. We saw him do this so many times last year with Russia. We even saw him do this with Biden, right? During the Biden administration. Like, Trump as a private citizen would say something and it would impact the markets because and that's what drove everyone to be like, oh yeah, he's the real president. Like, he actually says something and impacts the markets, and Joe Biden's words matter far less. And that was something that Trump always said during the Obama administration, that the president is the one person in the world who can speak and impact the markets. So here's Trump 2 days ago at a rally. I think he was in either Kentucky or Georgia, but here's what he said.
Is that a great name? Well, it's only good if you win. You know, you can only do. And we've won. Let me tell you, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over. But we won. But they gave me a list of names of generals. Sir, you can pick the name you'd like, sir. I said, the name of what? The name of the attack on Iran, sir. And they gave me like 20 names. And I'm like falling asleep. I didn't like any of them. Then I see Epic Fury. I said, I like that name. I like that name. Is that a great name?
Okay, so again, every time Trump gets up and speaks, he changes the narrative. He changes the story. Nobody can grab on to the story and make it their own. You can't, like, Reza Pahlavi can't do it. Maria Corina Machado can't do it. Lindsey Graham can't do it. Ted Cruz can't do it. Nobody can do it. Bibi Netanyahu can't do it because Trump is a better storyteller than all of them, and he's obviously the president, so his words matter more than Bibi Netanyahu's. And Bibi Netanyahu would not be wise to publicly defy Trump, especially considering how dependent he is on Trump. We'll get to that in a second. So here's Trump today speaking to Brian Kilmeade on Fox News.
I'm doing something about it. And I had to take an excursion. We had the greatest economy in history. We still do. Oh, this will bounce right back. When it's over, and I don't think it's going to be long, when it's over, this is going to bounce right back so fast.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
Will you ask anybody in particular? Would that be some of these a joint decision?
Well, I deal with people. I have great people.
Yeah.
I'm doing something about it.
When I feel it in my bones, when I feel it in my bones, it'll be over. Again, this is just, is there something happening in the Middle East? Ostensibly, yes, there's kinetic action happening in the Middle East. We have the story of the KC-130s collide. I think it was 2 of them collided. At least one of them went down and we'll look at that for a second. But you know, the narrative element of here, whatever actually is happening against Iran, we'll get that story, maybe not one day. Speculating on that like too much, there's a lot of wheel spinning there that is kind of I think a waste of energy. But understanding what's the bigger play here? Because right now the analysis against Trump by like earnest Trump supporters, like people who are going on podcasts who are pro-Trump, but are very like dismayed by the optics of all this. I, by the way, came out and immediately the day of or day after when I was on a show and just said, I'm disappointed by this because I'm disappointed that the neocons got what they wanted. The Zionists got what they wanted, right? They got this war. But I also was quick to say that Trump knows what he's doing. I don't think Trump's a fool. I don't think he was tricked into doing this. Right. I don't think I there's got to be a bigger play here. And now they're all getting rug pulled. Now that this thing is winding down, and the Israelis are saying it's not winding down. The Israelis are like, there's no timeline on this. There's no, that's what their official position is. There's no timeline on this. Right. And Trump said, of course, we played it on Tuesday. Maybe I'm the one who forced Israel. Like Israel didn't force me to do this. Maybe I'm the one who forced them to do it. Right. So again, you have things that are unfolding right now that I think are running in parallel to the Iran narrative. Whatever's happening with Iran, we'll get to Iran in a second. But before we do, let's go to some of these other parallel narratives that are happening. One of them is the domestic attacks, right? We have domestic attacks that occurred yesterday at a synagogue in Detroit, I'm sorry, I think it was in Michigan. And then the one at ODU, Old Dominion University. I'm far more familiar with that campus. I've driven through that campus many times. And let me play this clip of Elisa Slotkin. You'll remember her because she was part of the Seditious Six. Here's her take on this situation, right? Because they were very quick to assign, the Uniparty was very quick to assign like a narrative to those developments. Let's listen to this.
And I think it's just important to be clear, as the governor said, that whether anti-Semitism is coming from the left or the right, whether it's coming from some group that you like or don't like, you have a responsibility to call it out. Because when you don't, it gives permission for people to climb that escalation, that ladder of escalation that goes from saying hateful things online to saying them in person, to graffiti, to ultimately violence. And the Jewish community suffers 10 times the number of hate crimes than any other community in this country. So it is an epidemic. And until we push back on that permission, we're going to see incidents like this continue to proliferate. The Jewish community spends over $1 billion across the country securing their houses of worship, their schools, their institutions. No community in America should be fearful of having their own kind congregate for things like education and worship.
Yeah. So, and this is there's coordination here, of course. So as soon as this happened, like Laura Loomer wasted no time at all. It says, so here's I mean, she posted so many things about Tucker. And Tucker was the person in her. This is from today. Let me see if I can find the original one that she posted. The original one she posted is, and then Tucker actually responded, which he almost never does. He never posts anything. So she says, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens both said everyone needs to know where their local Chabad is. I said their hatred would lead to people shooting up Jews in synagogues. It will likely end up being a Muslim. The Trump administration must start deporting these Islamic savages from our country, and we must start holding people accountable for inciting violence. This is very sad. And so this is important because, again, first of all, we need to understand what happened with these shooters, because apparently at this synagogue in Michigan a month ago, I think it was, let me pull that up. There was a active shooter training drill with the exact people who were involved in the school officials who were basically the ones like involved in this shooting. So, and I have that right here. Oh, they deleted the post. Nope. No, they didn't. Here it is.
And or could see, this is earlier video of smoke.
Okay.
We're told it's an active shooter. We can or could see, this is earlier video of smoke coming from the synagogue. And there's a fire, appears to be a fire, smoke coming from the synagogue. What appears to be a fire is all we can say at this point.
Yeah, there's also some video coming into Fox 2 here of Oakland County Sheriff's members with assault rifles that appear to be approaching the area. So this does look like it does look like an active shooter situation here.
Yeah, we're told it's an active shooter.
You may not be able to see this top part. There's a still image on the top part of the video. But I'll read to you what it says. It's a still image of two men standing in front of like a presentation screen, they're giving a presentation, obviously. The post from Shadow of Ezra says the FBI led active shooter training at Temple, Israel in Detroit less than 2 months ago, where an attempted attack today took place. The synagogue's clergy and staff participated in the FBI-led training, which specifically used scenario-based exercises similar to today. And you can clearly read behind these guys, it says active shooter attack prevention and preparedness instructors, special agents Timothy Hurl and Andrew, I can't make out his second name or his last name because it's behind his head, but like Matata maybe. And then in the bottom corner of it, it says the overall classification of this briefing is unclassified, updated 9/2/2025. So I think it's saying that this briefing is unclassified as of September 2nd, 2025. So again, this is a pattern that we've seen, and patterns are very important. Patterns are how we identify threats, right? So how we identify behavior. And oftentimes with these operations, we always see in false flag operations that there is a training seminar either the day of or right before it happens, right? And like on 9/11, there was training exercises happening, and so what happened was the air traffic control people were told, "Oh, this is just a training exercise. Disregard the fact that these planes have been taken over. This is just part of a training exercise, right? Oh, sorry, the jets that could have shot down the planes before they reached New York City were elsewhere because they were doing a training exercise." And they didn't realize that in time that this was happening, right? That was 9/11. And we've seen many, many, many other examples of school shootings and other shootings where right before the FBI came in and did an active shooter situation and even put out like advertisements requesting what are they called? Like the actors, right? The crisis actors to come. Hey, we'll pay you whatever, $50, $100. We need crisis actors to come help us with this training seminar that we're doing, so that we have real actors involved, people injured or whatever, so that we can try to recreate realistic conditions. So that is very suspicious. Like, I don't know. Now, again, I'm not saying one way or the other what's happening here, but we were told for days that we were going to see active. Hey, there's Iranian sleeper cells in America. They're about to start doing terrorist attacks. We better watch out. Here they come. And then on the same day, we have two of them happen, one in Michigan and one in Virginia, one at ODU, and then one at this Temple Israel place in Michigan. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, again, $1 trillion budget for our military, right? How many billions do we give to the intelligence community? They're sitting there telling us, hey, there's going to be a terrorist attack here in the next couple of days. And yet they aren't able to stop it. That doesn't make any sense. And then the terrorist attacks happen at the exact same moment in two different states on different sides of the country. This feels like a coordinated false flag. This feels like something that was orchestrated by people who need American support for boots on the ground in the Middle East. That's what this feels like. It doesn't mean that's what happened, but that's what this feels like. It's absolutely what this feels like. And so now we can kind of pivot to the situation with Israel and what's happening with Israel. Because I guess going back to Laura Loomer, before we get to Israel, I want to finish this Laura Loomer thing. The reason that I'm concerned about what they're doing to Tucker right now is because, as I've said for a while, the content that Tucker's putting out right now is content that I put out 2 years ago. Okay. So if they're saying that Tucker needs to be held criminally liable for the content that he's putting out, then what they're saying is that I need to be held criminally liable for that content as well, because this is my fault as much as it is Tucker's. Obviously, I have a much smaller audience than Tucker does, but if he can be taken down for it, then any of us can be taken down for it. And so I don't really care what Tucker is. Like, I don't care if he's a CIA asset. I know that there's opinions vary on what he is. That's not really what this is about. What this is about is the First Amendment. This is about whether or not we are going to allow this to happen. And I warned everybody about this 2.5 years ago on Badlands Daily at the end of 2023, when Glenn Youngkin was the first Virginia or the first governor to sign into law the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, which included effectively criticism of Israel, comparing the IDF to Nazi Germany, saying that the Jews killed Jesus, which is written in the Bible, outsourcing the definition of a hate crime to a third-party NGO called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And then 38 states did that. And I said back then, here's the problem, guys. And this is when very few people were even concerned about Israel or talking about the Middle East or even cared, right? I said, here's the problem, guys. This is going to be a Trojan horse, because it's going to start with the criticism of Israel, and then it's going to transform into the criticism of Jewish politicians who support Israel. And then ultimately, like, once you get years and years and years down the road, the slippery slope, it's just going to be criticism of the US government. It's dangerous to criticize the government. Why? Because you might incite a politician. So you know what? Anyone who says anything mean about the government should be held criminally liable. That is, by the way, how it works in Israel. They consider it a national security threat if you damage the reputation of Israel. That is considered a national security threat. And you can be held accountable in different ways. You can be sanctioned as a news outlet. You can be arrested as a journalist. If you report information that they feel compromises their ability to operate as a military, if you're reporting what the IDF is doing, right? The IDF has to approve anything that the media in Israel puts out. It has to be run through an office at the IDF to make sure, like, from their perspective, to make sure that you aren't putting out classified information or information that the Arabs are going to use to run, kinetic operations against the IDF. So that is their value system. That is their way of doing things. That's their culture. And they're now trying to import that culture here to America. And you heard Bibi Netanyahu say it months ago when remember that day that there was like an attack at Brown University. There was an attack, I think, in Europe, and there was an attack in Australia, and it was all anti-Semitic attacks happening on the same day. Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't coordinated. And then Bibi Netanyahu said, our job as the Israeli government is to protect Jews wherever they live. So we have jurisdiction everywhere that Jews live. Anywhere that there's a Jew, we have jurisdiction as the Israeli government, because Israel is the Jewish people. It's one and the same. We are a religious ethnic empire, ethno-state. And so this is very concerning to me. Tucker replied to this and said, I rarely read the filth you publish and have never responded to it for the same reason I avoid pornography. It's unhealthy and I don't want to encourage it. But in this case, I understand exactly what you are doing, and I like to stop it now. I have never said or suggested that everyone needs to know where their local Chabad is or anything remotely like it. I didn't attack or even criticize Chabad, an organization I've mentioned precisely once in my life. Last week, I said I believed that IDF soldiers in Israel have received Third Temple patches for their uniforms from Chabad. I believe it's true. Let me know if I'm wrong, not that you care. The point of your post is to blame me preemptively for violent attacks on American Jews that you believe are coming. This is an absurd slander, of course. I abhor violence against innocents, which is why I am disgusted by what Israel has done in Gaza and why I argued against the current war in Iran. As a Christian and an American, I also vehemently oppose punishing anyone on the basis of bloodline. The concept of Amalek has no place in Western civilization and certainly not in my country. I am therefore strongly opposed to anti-Semitism, precisely as much as I am to the anti-Arab hate you promote or the anti-white bias embedded in the U.S. government and our largest institutions. It's all immoral and indefensible. I believe in the inherent rights of the individual because I believe in God. What you're doing divides this country more than you likely understand. I hope you will stop. And yeah, I agree with everything that Tucker says here. The Amalek, the theological aspect of this, if you're interested in that, go listen to Ash and I's show from Wednesday, the Tucker Being the Jew show. We go much deeper into that and talk about that. I will just address the political side of this. Obviously, this makes this foreign conflict very much a domestic issue. For people who say, well, I don't really care about that wretched desert on the other side of the world. Who cares? It's not my problem. And I would agree with you that it's not actually our problem. And we shouldn't have national security interest over there outside of just cultivating good diplomacy and making sure that the energy markets are stable. That's really all at the end of the day, that is the essence of our national security interest in the Middle East, is just making sure that the energy markets are stable so that the global economy isn't brought to its knees by a war, which is ostensibly what's happening right now. Now, what Laura Loomer is doing here is she's adopting the exact playbook of the left from a few years ago, when except instead of anti-Semitism, it was racism, it was misogyny, it was bigotry, it was all of the DEI stuff, right? All of that stuff, the woke stuff, and that's because Laura Loomer works for the same people that did all that. It's all the same people. It's a uniparty, and she's one of them. Of course, she's one of their agents. She's probably Mossad. I mean, that's what strikes me. But if I go to Laura Loomer's post she posted today, she says, Tucker Carlson should be held accountable criminally for every shooting that happens at a Chabad or synagogue. He needs to be forced to own the consequences of his words. Every Jew hater needs to feel the weight of their words. Muslim jihadists are listening to Tucker. They are taking in what he says, and they are taking action. As I exposed the Austin, Texas Islamic terrorist who murdered three people 2 weeks ago, followed and watched Tucker Carlson. I cannot stress enough how big of a national security threat Tucker Carlson is. He is radicalizing Muslims, and those Muslims want to kill Jews. Tucker has so much blood on his hands. I believe he deserves the blame for what happened at the Jewish day school in Michigan. He is sick. Everyone knows it too. So again, what she's actually saying here is that Tucker should be held criminally liable for the actions of what somebody else did. Okay. Now, there have been Supreme Court cases on this issue of incitement. I'm not familiar with the case law. But what I understand is I think I might be wrong, but like the screaming fire in a crowded like movie theater, I think that's actually not even like, I don't even think that's considered illegal. Even though that does incite like a panic and that could lead to people being injured. But again, here in America, as Tucker has said many times, we believe in the individual. We believe in the individual rights that is rooted in Christianity, which believes in the individual soul, and we believe in individual accountability. You are liable for your actions. You are not liable for the actions of other people. You're not liable for the actions of people in your ethno group, in your religious group, in your, that are the same color of you as you, or the same religion or whatever, same nationality, whatever it is. Like all Muslims are not collectively punished because one Muslim does a bad thing. All Jews are not collectively punished because one Jew does a bad thing, etc. Right? Except what Laura Loomer is saying here is she is taking the Israeli view, because what Israel did when it was created is it inverted that idea and said the community is actually more important than the individual. We will sacrifice individual Israelis and let them die in order to preserve the group. That's a collectivist mindset. That is how the Israeli culture is set up. Whether that translates to the Jewish communities in America, I can't say because I'm not part of those communities. But that is how the Israeli community views it: is the collective over the individual. And so now that is being imported here. That is being forced onto us. You can bet your last dollar that we're going to see Republican politicians and lawmakers call for this. You can bet your last dollar that you're going to see, and I have actually a clip of Ted Cruz that we're going to play here, that they are going to talk about how dangerous it is to criticize Israel, because that is effectively criticizing Jews, and that is going to get somebody killed. We saw the video of the sheriff in Miami who went to somebody's house and suggested that they take down a post on Facebook criticizing the mayor that he was a shill for Israel. And the sheriff said the concern is that somebody's going to read this and then go out and do something violent, and you're going to incite violence. That is not how this works. And this is the hill to die on right here. And actually, the hill to die on is the one that I'm going to play right now with Ted Cruz. Because, again, like as Ash always says, you just heard Alyssa Slotlin from the Seditious Six. She basically just said that we need to be vigilant against Jew haters or whatever. So here is Ted Cruz talking to the Christian Broadcast Network, which is a CIA cutout, a CIA front group. That was the thing created by Pat Robertson, who is a family member of mine, and not a nice man, a scumbag. And I have that on anecdotal authority that he is a scumbag. Cut off the whole family when he, in 1961, when he created the Christian Broadcast Network and pretended to be a Southern Baptist. He was raised an Episcopalian in Crozet, Virginia. And cut off the whole family when he was recruited by the CIA to create the Christian Broadcast Network and became a billionaire televangelist. Not a good man. Here is Ted Cruz putting out propaganda on the Christian Broadcast Network against Jesus Christ.
It is being, although it is being used online in a way that is meant to say, screw you, Jew.
Josh,
it is being used in a context very
Josh,
directly to say, I hate Jews, and that's almost an online code word. Christ is king is,
there it is.
I hate the Jew.
Is that your view, or why do you say that?
Because you see the people who are saying it, and they're saying it in that context. They're saying Jews are horrible, good, like they're attacking Jews, and they end with Christ is king to make it sound like somehow there's a biblical basis for attacking Jews. Look, Jesus was a Jew. And by the way, the twisted theology that says Jews are Christ killers, and that's been used to justify anti-Semitism, to justify persecution and murder. Look, as I read the Gospels, Jesus went to the cross willingly. He made the choice to go to the cross, and it was not the Jews who killed Jesus. It was me. It was you. Look, Jesus died for our sins because man is fallen, and the wages of sin is death. And Jesus took on the punishment that you deserve and I deserve so that we could be covered in his blood and receive salvation, not through works, not through what we do, but through the gift of God.
It's really important to understand what Ted Cruz is doing here, because Ted Cruz is laying the groundwork for hate speech laws that basically target people who preach the good word of Christ. That is being pushed in Israel right now. There have been multiple attempts, and you can get in trouble, by the way, if you proselytize, I think is the word, to anyone under the age of 18. You can be arrested and put in prison for, I think, 7 years. If you preach the word of God, the word of Jesus to a minor in Israel, and they're trying to expand that to, I think, anyone. There was an attempt 3 years ago to do that. It failed. Netanyahu said he wouldn't sign it. But what Ted Cruz is doing here, this is a slippery slope. He is laying the groundwork for others in the future to come in and say that saying the words Christ is King, which is the one truth in the universe, is that Jesus Christ is the King of the universe. But saying that one truth is inciting violence because of 2% of the population find it offensive. And really, it's much more than 2% of the population. It's the 40 million, whatever, Christian Zionists find it offensive. Apparently Ted Cruz finds it offensive. So this is the hill to die on, guys. Like, it's not a war in the Middle East. It's not a war in the Caribbean. It's not even election integrity. This is the hill to die on, because not only is this a free speech issue, but this is an issue about Jesus, and this is defending the right to recognize the one truth in the universe, and that's Jesus. So Ted Cruz is obviously a fraud and obviously a scumbag, as is Mike Huckabee, because Mike Huckabee, I think, believes this too. And we have to call these people out. We have to confront them in a very peaceful way. That's why I played the clip earlier of Cocoa Beach, where Oak got up and asked, how do we hold these people accountable? We hold them accountable by sitting them down and asking them hard questions and making them answer the questions. And then when they refuse to answer the questions, or they squirm in the chair, everyone will know that, okay, they're a fraud. Because what Ted Cruz is saying right here is indefensible, absolutely indefensible. And so let's go now to Israel. Before we get to Iran, we will talk about this development, which I wrote about in the news brief. Back, you will recall that I think it was it 2 years ago? It might have been. I think it was 2 years ago. There was a group of soldiers who were arrested by the IDF military police for gang raping a Palestinian prisoner, a Hamas fighter, purportedly Hamas fighter. And there was video online that was leaked online by the top lawyers at the IDF. They were later persecuted for doing that. But the video, it was like CCTV footage of them dragging this guy away, and then they all held up the ballistic shields. And I'm not going to get graphic right now with what happened, but the reports are out there. Gang rape, sodomy, objects, including a knife, and so much to the extent the guy required surgery. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, the guy required surgery. So there were police reports from the IDF, because 4 of the men were arrested. There were hospital reports, because the guy required surgery. He had to go to the hospital and get surgery. So there were medical reports, and affirming all of this. This wasn't made up. And then there's obviously video footage of them doing it. Okay, that was leaked online by the 2 top lawyers of the IDF. And then I think a year later, this was sometime last year, those lawyers were exposed because they did an investigation. They figured out who leaked the footage. And then you'll recall that woman, it was a man and a woman, and they both had to resign. And then they were both persecuted and ultimately arrested by the Israeli government because they damaged the reputation of the Israeli government and the IDF. And there was even for like a few hours, it was believed by the woman's family that she had killed herself because they found a suicide note, and then they and her phone, and then they found her like on a beach somewhere. Very strange. It was a very strange development. But point is that yesterday it was announced that those charges against those soldiers were all dropped by the government. This was like about as airtight of a case as you can get. And in the aftermath of that, let me just pull up the Badlands news brief because I have all the videos there. In the aftermath of this situation, there were riots. They called them the right to rape riots. You had Israeli settlers go to the military base where these men were being detained and attack like the military base and try to rip down the barriers to get in to free these men, these 4 men. And it wasn't just Israeli settlers. It was members of the Knesset. It was Itamar Ben-Gvir, who was the Minister of National Security. He was there. He was leading like the riots and the protests. I mean, these people were extremely violent. They were like physically getting into altercations with the IDF soldiers. And I think even a few of them may have been arrested for it. But pretty repulsive stuff. Like in terms of like a reaction, because they were outraged that these guys had been arrested. And then very, very strange. They took one of the guys was willing to go on television without a mask on. The 3 others, there were 4 guys who were arrested. One of them, I think his name is Shitrick, and I'm not kidding. That's his name. Meir Shitrick is his name, right? So here's a video of them like slamming slamming their hands on the walls, like on the doors, right? Like they're attacking the doors are trying to get into the military prison. And this person who posted says, "What are they doing?" It says, "These are Israelis breaking the doors, demanding the right to rape the Palestinian prisoners inside." Yes, it really happened. And then somebody asked, is this true? And Grok responds, yes, this video shows far-right Israeli protesters storming the Sde Tamein military base on July 29, 2024 to demand the release of soldiers detained for allegedly gang raping a Palestinian prisoner. Some Israeli officials defended the soldiers, with one stating such acts could be legitimate in wartime. So here is the one guy who was willing to go on camera without a mask on. The other 3 went on like news shows with masks on and refused to release their identity. This guy's name is Meir Shitrick. I kid you not, that's his name. And this is all in Hebrew, so we're not going to understand it. But they're basically trotting this guy out as a hero. They're like, this is the hero of the IDF. He looks like a creep, in my opinion. Yeah, so this is Israeli Channel 14 news, right? And then here's Israeli Channel 12. I just took a screenshot. There's like a 5-minute or a 2.5 minute clip of them like debating whether or not this should be legitimate. One of the panelists says right here, the quote is, "I told my friends that I don't give a rat's ass about what they do to a guy like that." Like saying like, yeah, this is totally acceptable for a bunch of men to gang rape another man because he is a prisoner of war. And then here there was a public debate in the Knesset that was posted online. There's a video of it on YouTube. I link it right here. You can go watch the whole debate yourself, right? With English subtitles. Here are 2 screenshots from it that I'll share with you. One of them, a person asks, one of the Knesset members asks to insert a stick into a person's rectum. And I apologize for the graphic nature of this, but this is just I'm relaying the information. To insert a stick into a person's rectum, is that legitimate? And then this guy whose name is Hanak Milwitsky, he's of the Likud party. He's one of Benjamin Netanyahu's buddies. And he screams, shut up, shut up. Yes, if he is a nukba, which I don't know what that is, but I guess that's a derogatory term they use for the Palestinians, everything is legitimate to do. So this is pretty awful. Bibi Netanyahu, of course, he rejoiced yesterday when he's like, this is a great day for Israeli justice. So happy that the Justice Department, or whatever it's called, the Ministry of Justice, dropped the charges against these guys. I guess maybe it was the IDF who charged them. All these guys were let go. This is, by the way, a pattern. Like we see this happen all the time. These Israeli settlers who get arrested for, attacking a Palestinian farm and trying to take their land, they get arrested for taking it too far, and then they get released like 6 hours later with, no charges or a slap on the wrist. This is a pattern of behavior. And again, I'm sure there are plenty of really good people in Israel. I've never been there, so I can't say for certain, but I'm sure I've certainly met Israelis. There have been Israelis at GARTS, and they have said very nice things to me, and I appreciate their kind words. But there is obviously a cultural rot that is on the scale of like Sodom and Gomorrah here when you are talking about when the Knesset, their Congress, is holding public debates and they're saying that, yeah, this is legitimate. We should allow our soldiers to gang rape men who are prisoners of war. That should be totally legitimate. It's really, really just, and the prime minister is celebrating that these guys didn't get in trouble. This is depravity on a level that is hard to wrap your head around. And when I hear guys like Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee and Lindsey Graham talk about Israeli values are American values, I'm sorry, but these are not my values. And when Laura Loomer is saying that me reporting this to you on this podcast right now could incite violence against Jews in America, and therefore I should be held potentially criminally liable for it, that's a real problem that we need to talk about. Like that, like I'm not the problem. Laura Loomer's the problem, because that's a Trojan horse for an expansion of that idea to basically protect the U.S. government from criticism. That's where we're going. That's where this is heading. And we need to be very, very aware of that. So I'll climb down off the soapbox and pivot off of this, but that happened. I'm sure Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee and Lindsey Graham will find ways to defend this. But the next time somebody interviews one of those guys, this should be put right in their face and said, what do you think about this, Mike Huckabee? What do you think about this, Ted Cruz? Are these our values? Is this our value system? See what they say. I'd be very interested to hear what they say. Now, the other thing that happened yesterday that is somewhat related to this, not the incident, but related in the sense that these guys were let off of their crimes. Bibi Netanyahu was not, because the pardons department, you'll recall President Trump has been calling for pardons of Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu is facing 3 charges, and I know for a fact at least 2 of them are slam dunk cases. The third one, I think, is going to require litigation and a trial, but 2 of them, I think, are, there's a recording of him doing what they're accusing him of doing, right? So there was a review process that I reported on this back in December, and I said this review process they said it's going to take 60 to 90 days, so maybe like the end of February, early March, we're going to get a response. Well, the response came yesterday, and they said we cannot recommend it. Official review advises against accepting Prime Minister's pardon request. And we don't need to read the full article, but the TLDR is that they are not recommending charges against Netanyahu. Or I'm sorry, they're not recommending a pardon for Netanyahu. And Trump, of course, came out and said, what you would expect Trump to say. This is outrageous. Y'all are a bunch of cowards. Herzog is a coward. He should absolutely, Bibi is a war hero, and he should absolutely get a pardon so he can focus 100% on the war. So Trump said, I want him to focus 100% on this war. Now, the interesting part about this is, as I wrote in the news brief today, is that this is like Groundhog's Day. Because the groundhog comes up and does he see his shadow? Do we get 6 more weeks of winter? The groundhog saw his shadow, so we are going to get 6 more weeks of winter, so to speak, winter being war, because there's an election now in October. And Bibi Netanyahu is facing getting ousted from office because the people he's up against, Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, among others, have adopted his warlike stance against Iran. They want the war against Iran. Right now, they're willing to negotiate on other things. They're willing to negotiate on a 2-state solution. They're willing to negotiate with Palestine. I mean, they say maybe they wouldn't once they got into office, but they're basically like, we can be reasonable. Netanyahu is not reasonable. We can be reasonable. That's their whole position, right? And so Netanyahu, of course, was like, I've gone through that whole history that Lapid and Naftali Bennett took office away from Netanyahu in 2021, and then that forced Netanyahu into the arms of Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, who came from a wing of the most hardcore religious zealots in Israel, who were not allowed to serve in the Knesset because of a law from 1994 that said if you are a Jewish supremacist who advocates for the supremacy of Jews over Arabs, over Muslims and Christians, then you cannot serve in the Knesset. That was because of Meir Kahane from the 80s, who openly called for violence against Christians and Muslims. And Netanyahu amended that law in December of 2022 to say that if that belief system is part of your religious beliefs and not your political beliefs, then you can still serve in the Knesset. And that's what brought all those guys back into the fold. And the agreement was Netanyahu would get the law changed. In exchange, these guys would be brought back in. They would be appointed to the highest levels of the government, the Security Council, which they have been. And that was basically their ticket to control Israel. So Netanyahu basically handed the keys to the kingdom over to the most radical religious zealots, who, of course, like support the right to rape and all that stuff, and kind of brought out the worst elements, I think, of Israeli society and Israeli culture. And again, I think this is the 5D chess. This is the 5D chess, in my opinion, for Trump, because as I said on my show I think on Breaking History on Wednesday, this was going to happen. This war with Iran was so much bigger than President Trump. This is something that, as Bibi Netanyahu has said, has been in the works for 40 years, right? And if it wasn't going to happen in 2026, it would happen in 2036. It would happen in 2046. It would happen at some point in the future where you don't have the Sovereign Alliance. You don't have President Trump. You don't have Vladimir Putin. You don't have Xi Jinping. You don't have Mohammed bin Salman around. You don't have the strong men, benevolent leaders who don't want to see the world destroyed in World War III, right? Who don't want to see this stuff happen, who don't want to see this empire, this Neo-Babylonian empire, this greater Israel thing that they're trying to make. They don't want to see that happen. So they're going to stop it. And so I think what Trump has done is he has put Israel in a position, these radicals, Netanyahu, the manifestation of it all, the personification of it all, to accelerate that timeline and condense it down so that whatever was going to happen in the future, instead of a 10-year war, we're getting a 10-day war, right? Instead of instead of Netanyahu being able to bide his time and do this strategically and be smart about it and like work with the optics so that the world doesn't turn against Israel too quickly, right? Until it's too late. Netanyahu basically has had to haphazardly do this over the past few years and just kind of plow forward with all this, right? The October 7th event, in my opinion, was a false flag. To what extent Israel was involved in the planning, I think that's to be determined, but it was absolutely allowed to happen. They knew it was coming, just like the Americans knew Pearl Harbor was coming and they were going to use it as a reason to get into the war. They knew October 7th was going to happen and they let it happen. And then they use it as an excuse to invade Gaza. And then they use that to incite hatred against Israel in the Middle East, which they then use to legitimize a campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon, Syria, etc. And so what's happened since the war in Iran is kicked off, and again, whatever makes you feel better, like is it real? Is it fake? Is it narrative? Is it kinetic? Whatever makes you feel better, like believe whatever you want. I don't know. I don't know for certain. But what we do know has happened for certain is that a war in Lebanon is now underway. You will recall the Golden Pager incident, or I'm sorry, the Pager incident where they blew up the Hezbollah leaders right after they negotiated a ceasefire with them, and that ceasefire was never broken. I mean, there's been, I think, a few little like incidents here and there, but overall, like the ceasefire has held. Hezbollah has not broken the ceasefire. The IDF has broken it a few times, but no, it didn't result in anything major. That is now out the window. The IDF has taken this opportunity to go full bore into Lebanon and wage real war. And Matt Ehret, as he said on the show on Wednesday, interviewed Vanessa Beeley, who lives in Lebanon, and she confirmed that there is like a war happening. There are missiles flying over overhead. And the IDF is operating there, and it is like a serious situation. And there are plenty of videos of, whether they're real or not, but there's plenty of reports and videos of Hezbollah attacking northern Israel. And basically what's being determined is that Hezbollah was far more prepared for this than the IDF. The IDF really underestimated what condition Hezbollah was in. They kind of assumed that Hezbollah was not going to be much of a threat, and it turns out they are very much a threat, and they can fight, and Iran as well. So let's just hit a few more things because we're at 4:00. I do want to just get to a few more points here. So again, what is Trump's play here with Iran? Well, again, speculation. I don't know. But what I do believe is that unlike some of these other analysts out there who think that Trump has basically tripped over himself and made a massive political miscalculation that's going to basically destroy his legacy and end his political career. I don't believe that's what's happened here. I think something else has happened. And I think what's happened is that Trump is now, he's driving the car down the interstate, and he's basically with another car next to him, Israel, and he's basically put his turn signal on, and he's heading towards the off-ramp. He's getting off the highway. And Israel is like, nope, we're not getting off. We're going full tilt. We're all in against Lebanon now. This is our one chance, because from Bibi Netanyahu's perspective, he's not getting that pardon from the government, which means as soon as he's out of office, he's going to be prosecuted for those 3 charges, and he's facing 15 years in prison if he's convicted on all 3 charges. Now, will he serve 15 years? Probably not. 10, maybe he gets 10. But at his age, that's a life sentence. 10 years in prison? I mean, hell, 5 years in prison at his age could be a life sentence, right? So he's fighting tooth and nail. Like, this is it for him. Like, this is his swan song. Whatever happens, this is his last shot at this. And so his political calculus is this: if he can expand the borders, this is just me speculating, but if Bibi Netanyahu can expand the borders of Israel between now and October, he in his own mind, he probably has a good shot of winning this election, right? Of getting a public mandate to stay in office, where Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett will get behind him because they're like, okay, like we can bide our time. We're young. I mean, Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett are younger than Netanyahu. They can afford to wait for their turn. If Netanyahu's being effective in creating greater Israel, let him cook. Right. But that's what Netanyahu has to deliver between now and October. Is he has to deliver southern Lebanon. I think he has to deliver parts of Syria. He has to deliver, I think, Gaza. I think he needs to deliver maybe the Sinai Peninsula. I mean, whichever direction he can go in to expand a war against Iran, like if he can defeat Iran, that would be a major victory. But here's the problem. The problem is this: all 3 of them, Netanyahu, Trump, and Gideon Sa'ar, who's the Israeli foreign minister, are all saying Iran's not doing a regime change. Netanyahu, here's the headline: Netanyahu says he doesn't know if Iranians will oust regime, threatens new supreme leader. And he said, the quote is, "You can lead someone to water, but you can't make him drink." And that's what he said in his first press conference of the war. He scoffed the IRGC puppet Majtabi Khamenei. Can't show his face in public. Says Israel killed top nuclear scientist. I believe the reporting right now is, according to Trump, I think Trump said this on True Social, that that Khamenei was potentially injured, but he's still alive in an attack. And I do find it interesting, though, that like all these people are saying, well, he hasn't been seen publicly. He's just putting statements out. Excuse me, sir, but Khamenei, like the father who allegedly just died, I don't think he's been seen in public for at least a year. As far as I know, I haven't seen any videos of him. I've heard they've like relayed like his messaging, but I haven't seen any videos of him in public or anything like that. So, and it is being disclosed now that he had cancer. And so he was willing to martyr himself. That's what they're saying, is that he basically knew he was going to die. And so he basically went and held this meeting where he knew the missiles would hit him, but he was going to die anyway because of cancer. I think he probably died a while ago, and this is just a convenient moment to say, okay, the Ayatollah is dead. He's been martyred. Now now we can rally behind that, right? But according to Trump, we have this post. Trump says, oh, that's interesting. He's posting some Claudia Sheinbaum quotes. So Trump just posted, okay, I got to say this. Trump just posted Claudia Sheinbaum admits that Trump called her to eradicate the cartels and she rejected his request and said, that's right. We said no, proudly no. And they say they're not a narco government. So yeah, we'll have to talk about that more on Tuesday. But let me get to this post. There's two posts I wanted to read. One of them is this one. It says, the United States is the largest oil producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. But of far greater interest and importance to me as president is stopping an evil empire, Iran, from having nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East and indeed the world. I won't ever let that happen. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So yeah, that again, I think when he puts stuff like that out, I think he's kind of baiting people to attack him. Like I think a lot of that's just narrative bait, because he's saying things that, okay, like, yes, the price of oil goes up, like we make more money, but if the price of oil goes up, like the price of the pump goes up, and for the average American, that's not great. But Trump's also demonstrated that he can say something and just bring the price right back down. He can do things like get millions of barrels released at once. So that is interesting. The FIFA thing is really interesting because the head of FIFA, who's a very good friend of Trump's, is welcoming the Iranian soccer team, the national team, to come to the World Cup, which is going to be played in the United States this year. And Trump says the Iran national soccer team is welcome to the World Cup, but I really don't believe it is appropriate that they be there for their own life and safety. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And he says the United States of America looks very much forward to hosting the FIFA World Cup. Ticket sales are through the roof. It will be the greatest and safest sporting event in American history. All players, officials, and fans will be treated like the stars that they are, President Donald J. Trump. So yeah, the Iranian soccer team being in America is going to be interesting. We have that coming up, by the way, in the next few months. And then here's the last one. Trump says, we are totally destroying the terrorist regime of Iran militarily, economically, and otherwise. Yet, if you read the failing New York Times, you would incorrectly think that we are not winning. Iran's Navy is gone. The Air Force is no longer. Missiles, drones, and everything else are being decimated, and their leaders have been wiped from the face of the earth. We have unparalleled firepower, unlimited ammunition, and plenty of time. Watch what happens with these deranged scumbags today. They've been killing innocent people all over the world for 47 years, and now I, as the 47th president of the United States, am killing them. That is interesting too, like the way he worded that. They've been killing innocent people all over the world for 47 years, and now I, as the 47th president of the United States, am killing them. What a great honor it is to do so. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Again, it's a little like this all feels a little cartoonish. It feels like he's baiting, he's baiting. This is him baiting, and his enemies basically read this, and then they get very angry, and then they kind of run off and they do something. They act impulsively. They respond emotionally, right? He's throwing off the enemy. He does this all the time. He's been doing this for 10 years, where he puts out a post, and it's designed to get the other whoever is going to oppose him here angry. And I don't think, by the way, that's necessarily Iran. Because my reading on this is that this is going to unfold the way Cuba has unfolded and the way Venezuela unfolded, is that we're going to see in Colombia, for that matter, because remember, Gustavo Petro was once the head of the cartels, and now he's working with Trump against the cartels, right? So I think that we're going to see something develop here where America gets out, hopefully, and Israel stays in. Now, I did just see right before we went live that the Pentagon has approved 2,500 troops to be sent as a expeditionary force. So we will get more into that that narrative on Tuesday, as well as we'll talk a little bit about the KC-130 incident. My take on a lot of this stuff is just general skepticism, but I'm not going to like jump in here and say, oh, well, that 100% didn't happen, or that did happen, but it was part of some plan. I mean, accidents happen, right? I mean, accidents and incidents happen. So, an aircraft getting damaged and going down during a war, assuming that there is actual kinetic conflict occurring to some extent. I mean, that stuff happens. So, I'm not going to read too into it. I'm really looking more to how the leadership is reacting to all this stuff. How is Lindsey Graham responding to it? How is Netanyahu responding to it? How are the Iranians responding to it? Because the official narrative, and we'll land it here, is that, or the official narrative, according to rumors, is that Steve Witkoff has reached out to the Iran. This is what the Iranians are saying. The Iranians have said, and I'm seeing a clip from JD Vance, a 1-minute clip. So maybe we'll watch this as we wrap up. But I'm seeing that the Iranians are saying this, and there's some rumors around, leaks, people familiar with the matter, White House aides, whatever, that Steve Witkoff reached out to the Iranians and asked for a ceasefire, asked to negotiate, and the Iranians told him to pound sand. And they're like, you know what? No, too late for that. We're not going to do it. We're going to keep firing missiles into Israel. And we did get reports from Haaretz, which is the oldest newspaper in Israel. It was sanctioned by Bibi Netanyahu because it criticizes him tremendously. It's an anti-Netanyahu paper. But they did report today that Thursday night, 11 Iran, now they're calling them cluster missiles. Just one of them dropped 70 bombs over central Israel. A cluster bomb, as I understand it, is basically a bomb that has a bunch of dumb bombs, meaning there's no guidance system inside. It opens up, the smaller bombs all disperse over a large area, and it's illegal to use those. They're banned internationally from use. Israel has been accused of using them in Gaza all over the place, but the reason is that there's no precision with them, and that if you fire them into an area that has civilians, you're going to kill a bunch of innocent people. Now, Iran claims that they have developed a smart missile, a smart version of this, where and there's diagrams of this. I think I might have one of these diagrams here. That the missile opens up, and then smaller bombs that all have individual independent guided systems shoot out, and they can all hit. I think there's 70 in one missile, 70 to 80, and each one can hit a different target. So they're not cluster bombs. So again, like one side saying one thing, the other side saying the other. I don't really have a dog in the fight, so that's just the information. But Haaretz is reporting that 11 of these missiles penetrated central Israel last night. Just one of them dropped 70 bombs in central Israel. They have video, and I think this is just one of them. That's what they're saying. So again, like, it seems like Israel is getting pounded. I'm always very hesitant to like share videos. Here's a video of somebody claiming that this is what one of these things looked like. This is from a week ago. Hard to say if that's a missile getting broken up, like getting intercepted or not. But there is this video that I wanted to play, which is because it has Bibi Netanyahu walking through the rubble, and then I'll play the JD Vance thing. And we'll wrap up. We're going a little long today, but there's a lot to discuss. Let's see. Where is that video? So many tabs open. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this is like a reporter, and the person who posted this, I think, posted fake news saying this is like Netanyahu's house and he's dead or something, but clearly Netanyahu's in the clip, and the guy even references him. So there's a lot of like fake news going around that Netanyahu's dead and the Israeli leaders are all dead.
Right now in one of the locations that was attacked, you can see just behind me, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has visited this place. This is one of the locations where a deadly attack took place. 9 people were killed, and there were, in fact, more than 25 who were injured out here. You could see Netanyahu, in fact, visiting this particular location out here. And this is the latest that we are picking up in Bet Shemshesh, where, in fact, these are the visuals of the right now in one of the locations.
The reports are that text messages were sent out the other night from the Iranian government to Israeli phones that said, "We've just destroyed the last radar tower in the region. Your government can't protect you. They can't even warn you of the missiles incoming. Leave this land now." And sign the IRGC. And then we did get reports from like the BBC and other outlets that there were missiles coming in without the warning sirens going off, the warning alarms going off. All that's notable. And then we do have RT is reporting that the IRGC spokesperson has said that Iran is now bombing 10 hiding places of U.S. and Israeli commanders in Israel. So is that true? We will find out soon enough. So we'll talk about all that on Tuesday. I see JD Vance is giving some sort of press conference. Looks like it's about the economy, but he is asked about Iran. So we'll play this last clip and end the show.
What did you advise the president initially as he considered his actions in Iran, and what are you urging him to do now, especially with Americans seeing higher prices at the pump and some of the fallout from that across the economy? Do you express any concerns like those you've expressed in the past on the possibility of these extended wars?
Well, Bill, I appreciate the question. I know you guys have to ask it, but imagine the situation. We're in the situation room where you can't even take your iPod in there, or your AirPods, I guess what they're called. You can't take your iPhone in there. You can't take anything in there because it is the most classified space anywhere in the world. And I sit there with Pete Hegseth and General Kane and Marco Rubio and the entire White House team, and the president and I and the entire senior team are talking about the options and about what we need to do and about how we must best protect the American people. I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not going to show up here and in front of God and everybody else tell you exactly what I said in that classified room, partially because I don't want to go to prison, and partially because I think it's important for the president of the United States to be able to talk to his advisors without those advisors running their mouth to the American media.
Okay, I'm seeing that for the first time. I think that's a fantastic answer. That's exactly what I would expect. That's what I would say in a situation. I think that's ridiculous to think that people are going to give you that kind of intel at the podium. But anyway, that won't stop people from asking. They're just doing their job. Okay, man, I could go another 2 hours. There's so much more to discuss about this, and maybe we'll have to do like a special show on Monday. Don't see any rants, but let me check the boosts. Should have done that while we were watching that video, but I do have this video from Rise and Tire. I'll play that as the outro. It's humorous, so it's a good lighthearted way to end kind of a heavy show that we were talking about some pretty heavy stuff today as we go into the weekend. Yeah, I think we're all caught up on the boosts. So awesome. All right, guys, we'll hit the thumbs up and we will see y'all on Monday evening, the Book of Trump. And yeah, we'll just take it from there. So have a great weekend. Shout out to Rise and Tire for making this video.